Hey, Frank, did you know this? As a pastor or a church leader, your building might not be a blessing. It might be bleeding you dry.
Oof.
Most pastors don't realize how much their facilities are working against them.
We'll show you how churches are flipping the script, turning old buildings into mission-aligned assets, and not just those financial anchors that can sometimes be a burden. Stay with us, because by the end, you'll see your building like you never have before.
This is going to be a good conversation.
Absolutely.
Hello, friends. Hello, listeners. Frank Bealer, Jim Sheppard here for another episode of the Next Sunday podcast.
Yeah, remember last time when we said Next Sunday podcast at the exact same time in the exact same way and almost canceled the episode right there?
We're not even going to try to do it.
Not even going to try.
Because we nailed it.
It
was nailed it.
That was the one time.
It was like a perfect two-part harmony.
Stereo.
Yeah, it's perfect. It was stereo. It wasn't a harmony. It was a stereo. Because we weren't trying to harmonize. We were just trying to... I don't think we were even trying to say it at the same time, but we did.
Just feeling it.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
By the way, just before we got on, Jim looked at me and said, "You're killing me, Smalls." And then here we are, right on the episode. So I'm still on the Sandlot right now. I got to re-engage here.
So many scenes from that movie that we could reproduce here, but that's not the purpose of the Next Sunday podcast, because we're here to stir the pot, initiate provocative conversations, provide possible solutions and thinking that would cause you to take your ministry to the next level in a way that you might not do if you were not listening to the Next Sunday podcast.
That's compelling. I'm in. Let's do this thing. Let's do this.
Even you didn't know that's what we're here for.
That's great. That sounds awesome. Sign me up.
Sign me up. Hey, we got a good conversation today, and this kind of sits behind a lot of the conversations we've been having, but we're going to bring it out into the front. And it's really a conversation about buildings.
Yeah.
And not just buildings, but how do we make sure buildings remain our friend and don't become a problem for us?
Oh, that's good.
And, healthy perspectives and, how do we take buildings that were built for one purpose? I mean, let's just dive in. We got a lot of conversation.
Let's go.
A lot of good notes in here. I love kind of where we're headed with this one.
Yeah.
But I think for me, Frank, I think what I've seen is there's just and you've seen this as well. You led Phase for a number of years and multipurpose and all the things that are happening there. What I've seen is just a significant generational shift in the way they see buildings. Mm-hmm. People will say, you have heard it said, that younger generations don't like buildings, but I say they don't like the kind of buildings that we've built.
Yeah.
They don't like those buildings, right? And what is the building that they don't like? Most of the buildings that got built in my generation's watch were built for one day a week, and then we tried to figure out how to use them the other 6 days of the week.
Yeah.
And that's not the building that younger generations want to see. The building they want to see, that they love, it looks more like a community center 6 days a week. Mm-hmm. And then, oh, by the way, we just happened to hold church there on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And that's a flip the script moment. It's a totally different perspective on buildings. And so we've got to talk about, what does that look like in your context? What if you've got one of these older buildings? What if you're thinking about building a new building?
Yeah. The great news is there are, and this isn't a commercial for these organizations, there are organizations that specialize in helping you rethink your space and figure this out. And so you're not alone in doing this, but I think you'd have to be a pastor living under a rock not to hear pretty much anywhere you go right now, somebody's having a conversation around multi-use, multi-purpose. Should we have a coffee shop? Should we have a child development center or school or education? How do we activate our space? How do we serve with a dream center or other kind of facility? How else can we use this space? Because it can feel, first of all, because it's so expensive. Buildings are so expensive. They've gotten even more expensive. It's insane. I was talking to somebody the other day about what we were paying to build a new campus at Elevation in the late 2010, early 2010s, compared to that same building today. I mean, it's double. I mean, it's insane. Probably more than that.
In a short period of time.
In a short period of time to build the exact same building. When you say double,
you're talking about it's gone from $210 a square foot to $430
exactly.
a square foot.
So $7 million building to a $15 million building to get the same thing. Yeah. And so you have a younger generation going, okay, there's a stewardship conversation here. What else is happening here? It feels like we're inefficient, which those are all good observations and wise things to have conversations about. So you've got a young generation that's just asking questions about how we use our building, to your point, not just on Sunday, but throughout the week. And they're going, hey, how does it look to activate our space to be known for something more than just what we do on Sunday morning? Let's serve our community. Let's meet the needs where they're at. And that's conversations around childcare. That's conversations around using our facilities for meeting the needs of those less fortunate, and just finding ways to activate our space in areas, because oftentimes churches have prime land, prime location that can be handled really well. There's going to be a separate conversation we're going to have as part of this to talk about funding ministry through activating our space. But let's start with just saying, hey, we're looking at these dead, unactivated spaces that aren't really doing anything. And you've got a generation going, hey, we should do something with this.
Yeah. So what happens is, Frank, I think, and you know this, buildings end up saying to those who are looking at the building what's important to us.
Yeah.
How we've constructed it and what we're using it for really begins to say what's really important here. Now, you can say something else is important, but what you're doing with your building is going to really express what's important, right? And so if you're looking at it as just a Sunday or a Saturday Sunday, if you do weekend services, facility, that says something. If you're looking at it as a Monday through Sunday facility, that says something completely different, right? And we're not saying one is right and one is wrong, but I think what we're saying is, would you please just put the question on the table and deal with it for your church?
That's so good. And here's what I see. The challenge is, I think lots of people are bringing up the conversation now in elder meetings and board meetings, and then it gets tabled. So it's like, hey, should we do a better job? Should we use our children's ministry to activate for a child development center because there's a child care crisis in our community? Yeah. Should we do this? And the people in the room, while thinking it's a good idea, don't know how to take those next steps. And so it gets tabled. And so it's not that it doesn't make sense to leaders, that it's not logical, that it's not good. It just takes multiple initiatives and sometimes expertise that isn't in the room to figure out if that's really a good idea or if it's going to be effective. Yeah.
Well, and here's what I can see is the really precarious position, Frank. The really precarious position would be the church that has built out its campus over a period of time. And let's just say they finished up in 2010, 2015.
Yeah.
Which means their perspective would have been different, but they're built out now. And those buildings were built in a different season. And you've now got more younger families you're going to have to do a retrofit. You're going to have to rethink how you purpose those buildings. And in some cases, you might be in a position where you just completely redo the building altogether. Just start over. You might take the building down and redo it. As unthinkable as that may have sounded at some point in time, that might be the better stewardship than just to have outdated space, which is poor stewardship.
That's really good. You know, there have been points in history, time and time again, where the church has been the center of the community. It's where we did weddings and funerals. Less of that nowadays.
Yeah.
It's where education occurred, if we're going to go way back. So education occurred oftentimes it was the biggest gathering space. It's where the community meetings were. It was where everything was. It was the single large gathering space in a community that happened. And yet over time, we've kind of relegated it to, in the name of making sure that we do something well and don't do a bunch of things poorly or mediocre at best, we refocused in the late 90s to really emphasize Sunday morning, which I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we may have gotten overextended and could have needed to tighten things up to be able to do some things with excellence. But now we're in a season where it's just time for us to have an honest conversation of how is our facilities meeting very real needs in the communities, not just the most trendy thing or not the easiest thing to adapt our space. I know churches that are more in the suburbs that are like, we're going to have a coffee shop because we already have a coffee maker and we have a big lobby. That is not the reason to have a coffee shop. Like there's somewhere in that equation that something didn't make sense. Quick, easy, this slam dunk. People are going to come. It's like, what's your drive through? How can I order in advance? Are you in the flow of traffic and what people need? Are you building community? How does it work?
Are you serving decent coffee?
Are you serving decent coffee? Doesn't have to be great coffee, at least decent coffee. And so it's going, okay, how can we look around and find a very easy solution? That is an option. Yeah. But sometimes it's going to your mayor and going, what do you need? What do you wish you had space for? What's going on in the community? Where are we struggling? And having a very honest conversation about that. And that might be where it leads to a childcare conversation where suddenly you look at your preschool and kids ministry environment, and while it was good for preschool and kids for church, it doesn't work for education because there's other things that have to change from a codes and statute standpoint. It's got to be kind of wrestled with and reworked. But does that meet a real need that can lead to great ministry and really have some impact and really activate that space during the week? On the flip side, some people are seeing the cost of buildings and going, multi-use is now part of our strategy in order to be able to remain in our community. So oftentimes churches are starting up in a high school or whatever it may be, a church plant. Right. And as soon as it's time to build a building because they've outgrown that space, they either have to go further out in the suburbs because that's all they can afford, or they've got to figure out some way to stay. And multi-use can be part of that conversation of figuring out how can we activate our space and build space that has different sources of income to meet a need in the community, but also help make sure that we stay present in the community.
You know, that's such good observations, Frank. And I'm sitting here thinking about churches, and it's not a small number of them. A lot of churches in a certain season built out Sunday morning education class space for adults, for the adult Sunday school, for lack of a better word, and have now found that model doesn't work anymore. I mean, we already talked about that on the last podcast. You know, the attendance patterns in the life of a church. Regular attenders are coming less than 2 times a month. It's really hard to build Sunday morning, Sunday school models on that pattern. And so they're finding it's not effective, and they're doing, well, what are you going to do with that space?
Right.
You've got a massive repurposing issue, and it calls for you to be a good steward of the space on Sunday morning. What are you going to do about that? You know, you've converted and you've found that weekday small groups in homes is a better model for your church. Great, but now you're stuck with all this space that you built in a certain season, and you've got to figure out, how do I be a good steward of that in a new season where that's not the space we need on Sunday mornings?
And inviting people in that have expertise for that to say, hey, how would you see our space? Because I mentioned this on a podcast or two ago about HGTV and how there's some people that just have the gift to be able to see it. I'll never forget walking with the incredible Mark Batterson, pastor up in D.C., seeing the space that would ultimately become the Capitol Turnaround, which is where he wrote the book Circle Maker. We walked in that space, and it had been owned by the government for a while, or occupied by the government. And so they had this thing so cut up with all these offices, very poorly designed, just squares everywhere. It was narrow hallways, it was so complicated. And he walked in, and we had plans in our hand, but the reality was there were still these little thin, hollow walls everywhere, but he had the ability to just see through them.
Yeah.
Like he could see it. That's not most people. They see a vision of what could be, but the transition to get there, they just can't see it. And so there are people gifted and organizations gifted that have that ability to come in and help you see your space differently than how familiar you've come to it. And so you know it a certain way. They can help you. Have you ever thought about this? No, I haven't thought about that. I was talking to somebody not long ago. They were wanting to build onto their space. And I said, hey guys, I'm just looking over your plans real quick. Is this all your land? Because the land was excessive compared to their church. They didn't need all the land. And I was like, is this all your land? And so I just threw out an idea. I said, what if you just sold the corner to like a Starbucks or a Chick-fil-A or something? the amount of cash that would give you to feed the building. And oh, by the way, we're going to put a new sign on our church building facing the drive-through to where when they're marketing and bringing all these people in, they're seeing this church. This could serve two purposes. This could be a great way. Sometimes you just need a fresh set of
QR code. You just scan the QR code, learn everything you need to know.
Learn everything you need to know. Watch a sermon while you're waiting in line. A 2-minute message. Like, this could be great. But they had the land. They just didn't think about it that way. And so they just needed somebody to come in and just help them think through it a little differently and activate their space. And once again, there's a stewardship conversation around, gosh, how do we financially make it all work and be the best steward of what God's entrusted to our care?
That's such a good conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, Frank, this was not in our notes, but I thought about it while we're talking about this. And I know that this is probably not going to be the people that are in our constituency watching this, but I feel like we need to talk about this topic.
Yep.
What about the church whose life cycle seems to be ending? Its season seems to be ending. They had this amazing building and this amazing space with a very small number. I mean, less than 25 people showing up on the weekend. Meanwhile, there's a church plant in the area with all of the vitality in life that doesn't have a building. There's a time and a place and a season. And I'm not saying this you come to this lightly, but that maybe it's time for you to give up your building. Maybe it's time for you to give up your building to someone whose life is rising as yours is easing, and you could see the blessing of a new generation take over that space and see it into the future, but it wouldn't be your church.
Yeah.
And I would say to both parties, I would say to the church plant that sees that building and thinks, man, what could we do? Whatever your most humble posture is, be more humble than that.
Yeah.
And going in there. Because this is a hard thing. The chances are that the people who are in there are multi-generational families from that church. It's not easy for them to let go. It's not a transaction. It's a lot more personal than that. And so don't go in there with, well, can't you see? You're dying. We're not. This is a match literally made in heaven. No pun intended. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Because that's not likely to work. Go in with a reverent posture that would say, hey, Miss Gracie, what would it look like to see children baptized in this space again? Oh, that would thrill my heart. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Help them to see dreams and things that are at this point past tense, but could happen again in that space. But it might not be in the name of the church that you're sitting under right now. Because I just believe, Frank, in the name of good stewardship, there's so many good matches that could be made out there. And if both parties would just handle it correctly, in humility, Lord, this was not our space to begin with. What we want for this space is what you want for this space. And my guess is you don't want death, but you want life here.
Yeah.
And for the other party to come in and say, we don't want to be presumptuous, but we see a need and we see that maybe we could do something for your building that you couldn't do, and that is bring new life to it.
Yeah.
Right? And just be humble. I just really thought that wasn't in our notes anymore, but that feels like part of the building conversation.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many of those across America that I see. And if we could get those matches made, man, some of these churches, they'd be freed up from high schools and rented facilities and, tear down and set up and take down every single week, and now in their own space. And it could happen.
And that's an amazing location.
An amazing location. Now, you're going to have to redo the space. You're going to have to retrofit it. You're going to have to go in and redo it. Yeah. But it's yours. You've got a space. Yeah. And you can bring life to a space that God blessed in another season, and he can bless it again in a new season.
You know, Jim, it's interesting. I'm glad we've kind of taken this turn. One of the things I've discovered, I've helped with a handful of mergers. And one of the things I've realized is that there's a staffing-related conversation that is woven through, but rarely expressed. And it's, wait a second, if we vote for this, our pastor loses his job. And it's like, and oftentimes we get so focused on the building and how we're going to steward the legacy that nobody addresses that. And so what does that look like? I have some friends that did a merger that's gone, I think, very, 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 very well. And the senior pastor became the associate pastor of this church plant and was over pastoral care and visiting and all this stuff. And it's been a home run. And so he's fine.
Love that.
Part of something that's fired up, got excited about it, was able to humbly not be the leader, and make a shift that's just been really cool. But that was like this undercurrent that wasn't spoken for a while. It was all about the facility.
Yeah.
But there is this other reality of like, ultimately, they feel like they're doing something negative with that vote. And the other thing is, people take pride in what they gave to,
yes,
and they want to know that what they were investing in wasn't all for naught, and helping them understand that one thing going away so something else can thrive is just as good as legacy as the name continuing in and of itself. It's not the name on the building.
That's right.
It's life change happening.
That's right.
And that takes a lot of kindness and graciousness and humility in conversations. And along the way, there'll still be a couple people that still aren't sure it's a good idea.
No question.
So you just got to kind of navigate it.
Yeah, no question.
At the end of the day, these facilities are expensive, and we've got to do a better job of stewarding them well and activating them to have the greatest impact in our communities.
Let's shift a little bit here as we kind of move into the final part of this conversation. There's a lot we could say. I feel like there's something really important we do need to say before we move out of here, and that is for us to talk about what about this idea, Frank, and in multi-use, you've seen a lot of this. I've seen a fair amount of it. What about this idea of, hey, isn't there some space here that we could leverage for economic benefit and create streams of income for our church? Let's talk about that idea. Start us off and just kind of give us some thoughts on that.
For sure. I mean, I think we
It's
need
a legitimate idea. It's a legitimate idea.
And so I'll use childcare because that's probably my greatest expertise in this, in multi-use. Here's what I know. Churches in the past, when they've decided to do infant through 5-year-old specifically, so I'm not talking about through a K through 12 Christian school, when they decide to do that as childcare, as preschool, as whatever they want to call it for their community.
Mother's Day out, whatever.
Mother's Day out. You have to pick a primary purpose. Is it revenue generation? Is it discipleship? Is it evangelism? You have to declare a primary purpose.
Right.
Because what we end up finding is that the preschools that are currently operating using some money from tithes because their income isn't quite enough, they're kind of limping along. Nobody really wants to get rid of it. It falls in this in-between. If you ask, it has no primary purpose. And so that becomes a complication.
So that's the common denominator that you've seen.
Absolute common denominator.
Yep.
So when we're evaluating, do we want to activate our space? If income is a conversation, okay, and it's going to help offset, we're going to be able to renovate our building, and we have to generate income in order to be able to do that. Well, that's going to be a certain price point. So what does that mean for government subsidies serving low-income families?
Right.
Are we going to be a licensed center or an exempted center? All these decisions are determined. Well, you can't have both. We want to be the least expensive in town and be to serve and meet a need for those that aren't eligible for government subsidies, but we want to be profitable and throw off some money for, like, it just doesn't work. What I call the multi-use equation. I wrote a book on this, of the multi-use equation before lacked clarity and purpose and definition. Once we define that, there are some ways that it can, event space or co-working space, you can activate your space and generate income and still do some good in the community with it. Like, it can still meet a real need. We just have to define what need are we meeting. So for example, with childcare, if you say, hey, I hear there's a huge need for childcare in my community, most likely the truth of that statement is the greatest need is infants and toddlers, the least profitable to care for. Okay. So you may have infants through 5-year-old. The biggest need is infant through toddler. If along the way you end up cutting infant and toddler because that's harder and it's more expensive, and doing 3 through 5, I don't know how much help you made for the community, but you did kind of start a little thing that one time, right? So you just got to be very mindful going in on what is your primary purpose. If you go in and you happen to have a leadership team that has some business savvy and some capability to be able to do this and really optimize your space, praise God. But it cannot be, in my opinion, you cannot structure it in such a way that you are so good at the business of your space that you no longer need to disciple and raise up your people in understanding what generosity looks like in the church. It is not a supplement. Your business savvy is not a supplement for doing the discipleship work.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the caveat that we want to put out here.
Absolutely.
We're big fans of creating other income streams, not in lieu of the giving of your people,
That's right.
in addition to the giving of your people.
Yeah, so good.
So that you can do more things, not the things that you already are going to do, but so it's not in place. You're going to teach tithing. You're going to teach biblical generosity. You're going to teach good, Christian budgeting courses. So people who are messed up and jacked up in their finances can figure things out and have hope. They can get on a good track. You're going to do all of those things, but this could be a way, and childcare is just one of them. There are other streams of income that we hear of. So it's not just that category, but it's all those. And there are some people out there who it feels like, in their church, what they're doing is they're doing this in place of making sure that their people are doing what they're doing. We want to be clear. This is not the cake. It's icing on the cake, to use that analogy. It's additional income that would allow you to do maybe some other things. If it were me and I had other streams of income, I'd probably figure out a way to give it all back into the community somewhere. Right? It would be a beyond the walls type thing. Hey, the more you patronize our coffee shop and our sandwich bar over here, the more you do these things, the income that gets driven off of those, we're going to give all of that away into the community. We're not using that to support the life of the church. So people know when you buy coffee here, when you have a sandwich here, when you have a salad here, instead of going down the street to a for-profit place, you're actually doing some good. And by the way, I wouldn't have a price list.
Okay.
And
I make a donation.
I would have suggested donations because there was a guy some years ago, he had his donation, he had his price list. And a friend of mine in ministry had a coffee shop, and they went to suggested donation. You're not required to do it. And if you come in there and you can't pay, you don't have to pay. Yeah. And nobody thinks less of you. Revenue went up 28%.
Really? That's
on same
cool.
sales.
Yeah,
on same sales. Revenue went up 20%.
That's cool.
28%. Because people would go in, and maybe I've bought 2 coffees and it's $6.50 and I just leave a $10 bill there.
Yep.
Right? Because I don't want to change. You can have that.
You're doing good work.
You're doing good work.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to have a conversation anyway. I want to use your internet.
That wasn't in the notes either. Jim wouldn't have a price. Of course you wouldn't have a price list, Jim.
That's it. That's so great.
But it would be a suggested donation list because I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that is a $3.75 cup of coffee. And if you want to pay for it, great. If you want to give $10 for it, great.
Yeah.
And if you can't pay for it, I want you to have that cup of coffee.
That's really good.
Right?
Yeah, I love that. Listen, when it comes to multi-use, and I was thinking through how to steward our buildings, here's what we know. The conversations are happening. They're happening in your rooms and other rooms all across the country. I would say lean in on that. Yeah. Don't miss the opportunity to have good conversations around it. Just at the end of the day, before you make a move, be clear on why you're doing it, what you hope to achieve, and the good that it's going to create for your community, and you'll be just fine.
Yeah, because we want your building to be a blessing, not a place that's bleeding you dry. Yeah, that's what we want. True. We want your building to be a blessing. It was meant to be that. Don't let it bleed you dry because it's costing you too much, or you're stewarding it poorly, or it's irrelevant for how you're trying to do ministry these days.
Don't let your mortgage be a millstone around your neck of ministry.
You know what?
That'll preach.
That'll preach, and that's going to be where we're going to wind up for next Sunday, because I tell you what, if you take that and go back to your next board meeting and you put that on the table, it could change everything, and that's what we're here for. Next Sunday, it could change everything.
Everything.
Thanks for tuning in, as always.